If you spent your childhood reading the room before you even entered it, psychology says you didn't just grow up, you were recruited. Recruited into a role you never applied for, never auditioned for, and never got the chance to refuse. You became the emotional regulator of your entire household before you even knew what emotions were. You probably grew up believing that keeping the peace was the same as being loved. And somewhere along the way, those two things got so tangled together that you still can't tell where one ends and the other begins. Before we get into these traits, let me know in the comments, does any of this already feel familiar to you? The first trait you almost certainly carry is a pathological inability to say no. Not just hesitation, not just discomfort, a full physiological response. The racing heart, the dry mouth, the immediate flood of guilt. The moment someone needs something from you. This started because in your childhood, saying no wasn't an option. It meant someone would cry, someone would rage, someone would go silent for 3 days, and somehow, some way, that would all be your fault. You learned that your comfort was always negotiable, but everyone else's was sacred. So now you say yes when you mean no. You say yes when you are exhausted. You say yes and then spend the rest of the day running on empty, wondering why you feel so invisible. The second trait is something therapists call emotional hypervigilance, and it has quietly taken over your entire nervous system. You can detect a shift in someone's mood the way a storm tracker detects pressure changes, a pause before a reply, a slightly flat tone in a text message, a look that lasts 1 second too long. Most people wouldn't notice any of it, but you notice everything. You were trained to, because in your childhood, missing those signals had consequences. So you became fluent in a language nobody taught you, the language of other people's emotional weather. And in doing so, you forgot to ever learn your own. The third trait is a deep, exhausting tendency to over-explain yourself. You don't just say you can't make it to dinner, you write a paragraph. You provide evidence. You build a whole legal case for why your needs are valid. Because somewhere in your past, your needs were cross-examined. You had a parent, or two parents, or an entire household that treated your boundaries like inconveniences to be argued out of. You had to earn the right to want things. And so now, even with strangers, even in low-stakes situations, you feel this compulsive need to justify your existence. The fourth trait is the one that isolates you the most, and that is chronic resentment that you feel deeply ashamed of. Because you are the kind, giving, reliable one, aren't you? People depend on you. Everyone loves you for it. But underneath all of it, there is a slow-burning ember, a quiet voice that wonders, when was the last time someone showed up for me without being prompted? And then the shame comes rushing in, because you tell yourself you are not supposed to carry that. Good people aren't resentful. But here's the truth. Resentment isn't a character flaw. It is the emotional receipt for every boundary you didn't get to keep. The fifth trait, and the one that strikes at the very core of who you think you are, is that you have no real idea what you want from your own life. What brings you joy? Not in service of someone else, but just for you. Most people who grew up as a family peacemaker draw a complete blank at that question, because from the very beginning, your wants were always filtered through one question: but how will this affect everyone else? That question was planted so early and repeated so often that it eventually replaced your own inner voice entirely. You never got the chance to just want something purely, selfishly, humanly. Your desires were never the starting point, until one day you simply stopped questioning that. But here is what I need you to sit with for a moment. Every single one of these things, the yes when you mean no, the hypervigilance, the over-explaining, the resentment you carry quietly, the silence where your own wants should have been, all of it. It was a child's genius.
It was the most sophisticated survival strategy a young mind could have invented under those conditions. You kept people from fighting. You absorbed what nobody else was willing to carry. You held your family together with your bare hands. That took more strength than most people will ever understand. The shift happens when you realize that the household you spent your whole childhood holding together no longer exists. You are not that little person anymore. You are allowed to be the person someone else takes care of for once. You are allowed to have a need without a justification attached to it. You are allowed to say no and let the discomfort just sit there without fixing it.
Learning to put yourself first after a lifetime of putting everyone else ahead of you doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like betrayal. But stay with it, because on the other side of that feeling is a version of you who finally gets to rest. Someone who exists not as a caretaker, not as a solution to someone else's chaos, but simply as a person. And that person has always deserved to be here. If this reads something inside you, subscribe, because this is exactly the work we are doing here, together.